He laughed in my face when I said my dad was a legend, but he was not laughing when the Pentagon called his precinct. What started as a cop mocking a black teen turned into a national scandal, a Medal of Valor ceremony, and a truth that shook the entire country. Keep watching, because legends do not stay buried forever. He laughed, loudly, in my face. Right there, in front of the whole crowd, I had just said, "My dad is a legend." And Officer Logan leaned in, hands on his belt, eyebrows raised like I would told him I was Santa Claus. "Say that again, kid." He mocked. Then he turned to the others, 3 other white officers, and a few bystanders, and pointed a finger at me, like I was some kind of joke. "You hear that? This little punk says his daddy's a legend." The wind was biting cold that afternoon, and the light from the corner liquor store buzzed dim over the cracked sidewalk where I stood. I was only 14. My backpack hung heavy on my shoulders, my hoodie soaked from the drizzle, my sneakers worn and one of them missing its sole, but nothing weighed heavier than the shame burning on my cheeks. My name is Malik Henderson. I live in South Philly, raised by my mom and grandmom in a brownstone that creaks when the trains go by. I am not the kind of kid who gets into trouble. I read books about the stars. I like chess. I stay out of the streets. But that day, that moment, I realized it did not matter what kind of kid I was. To them, I was just another black boy with a loud mouth and no future. What happened that afternoon did not start with violence. It started with suspicion. I had just come out of the corner store with a can of pepper and a pack of gum. That is when Officer Logan pulled up, said there was a report of a stolen bike, and I fit the description. Funny how I always fit the description. Always a hoodie, always suspicious behavior, always a black kid. I tried to stay calm. I told him I had not seen any bike, showed him my receipt. But he was not looking for truth. He was looking for control. "You got Ed, son. I am 14. He scoffed. "Figures." He asked what my name was, where I lived, what school I went to. I told him. Then he asked what my father did. And that is when I said it. My dad's a legend. I said it not with pride, but with pain, because my dad was not around anymore. He died when I was 5. I do not remember much, just fragments, his voice humming jazz, the feel of his hand lifting me into the air, the smell of cologne and metal. But I remember what my mom told me. She told me he served, that he was honored, that they called him the ghost 'cause he could go behind enemy lines and come back without a sound. She never told me the details, said it was classified, said the Pentagon sent a letter when he passed. I was too young to understand then, but I held on to those words like armor. Your father was a legend. So when Officer Logan laughed, mocked, it was like he reached into my chest and crushed everything I held sacred. I looked up at him, my fists trembling at my sides. "It is true," I said. He stepped closer. "You calling me a liar? Boy, no, sir. I am just saying. You do not know who you are talking about." He laughed again, louder this time. Then he reached for his radio, and I panicked. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I knew how these things go. I would seen the news. I would seen the hashtags. Tamir, Trayvon, Elijah. Names turned into headlines. I did not want to be next. But before he could say anything into that radio, A voice cracked through the static on his shoulder. "Logan, stand down." He blinked. "Come again." I said, "Stand down. This one's not yours." I saw confusion flicker across his face. He glanced around, suddenly less sure of himself. Then, from behind the squad car, a tall figure in a long, dark coat stepped into view. His face was hard to see in the rain, but his presence was undeniable. He was not just a man, he was command. And clipped to his chest was a badge that did not belong to local law enforcement. I did not recognize him, but somehow he recognized me. "Malik Henderson?" he asked. I nodded, heart pounding in my ears. He gave a slight smile. "Your father saved my life. You look just like him." For a second, the world went silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. Officer Logan took a step back. "Wait, what the hell is this?" The man ignored him. He stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You do not have to worry, son. I got this." He turned to Logan, his voice now cold and clipped. "You just embarrassed yourself in front of a legacy. You will be hearing from the Pentagon." Logan's jaw dropped. The Pentagon. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes. And just like that, the laughter was gone. Only silence remained. And in that silence, I stood a little taller, not because I was the son of a legend, but because, for the first time, I felt seen. For the first time, someone believed me. And that changed everything. My name is Malik Henderson. I was born under a streetlight in the dead of night, while sirens howled blocks away. Mom said I came into this world with my fists clenched, like I knew from day one I would have to fight for every inch of respect. I am 14 now, just a kid. But where I am from, being a kid does not protect you. Not when your skin comes with assumptions stitched into it, like barbed wire under your hoodie. After the confrontation with Officer Logan, I did not sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I could not stop thinking. About how quickly his smile turned into control. About the way he said boy like it was a warning. About the man in the long coat who knew my father's name like it was carved into history. I had more questions than answers, but I had always lived that way. My mother, Jada Henderson, is the strongest person I know. She works 2 jobs: nurse by day, janitor by night. Her hands are calloused, her back always aching, but her voice never loses that edge of warmth. She never remarried. She says no man could ever stand next to the memory of Marcus Henderson. That was my father, a name I wore like armor but knew little about. To most people in the neighborhood, he was a mystery. To me, he was the ghost in our photo frames, the reason Mom looked out the window for too long some nights. We lived in a modest brownstone on 29th and Wharton, the kind of place where the wallpaper peels, but the memories stick. Our neighborhood was not rich, but it was alive, as Geraldine on the corner sold peach cobbler like it was gold. Carter still fixed bikes out of his garage and taught little kids how to patch a tire for free. We had our problems: violence, poverty, broken promises, but we had pride too. Still, growing up here meant walking a thin line. You had to be invisible and exceptional all at once. Fit in but stand out just enough to be worth something. And when you are a black boy in America, there is always someone watching, waiting for you to slip. The next morning after the incident, My school locker had a sticky note, "Your dad a ghost or just a lie?" I did not recognize the handwriting, but I did not need to. I would heard it all before. "You always talking like you better than us. Reading books one make you rich. You do not even got a daddy." It was noise, but that day, it stung, because deep down, I did not know if I believed it myself. I sat in the counselor's office later that day. Mess. Langley, a black woman in her 40s with thick-rimmed glasses and a laugh that could split clouds, had always looked out for me. She saw past the hoodie, past the silence I carried. Today, though, she was different. "You all right?" "Malik, I am fine." "You sure?" "I heard about what happened." I said, "I am fine." She paused, folding her hands. Sometimes fine just means scared and alone, wrapped in silence. I did not answer. I could not. She leaned forward. "You know your father saved lives." My eyes flicked up. "What?" I did not know him personally, but I knew someone who did. Colonel Isaac Munro. He used to teach a military history course I took back in college. Always said the quietest soldier he ever met was Marcus Henderson the Ghost. They called him, never took credit, just did his duty. I swallowed hard. "How do you know it is the same person?" She smiled. "Because he showed me a picture once. You were in it. You were on your dad's shoulders." I do not remember that moment. But suddenly, I wanted to. Desperately. He was a legend. "Malik," she said gently, not just because of what he did, but because of how he carried it with honor, with humility. That night, I sat on the floor of our apartment, pulling out an old box labeled Dad. Inside were medals, a folded flag, a worn photo of him in uniform, holding a baby me, a letter in a sealed envelope I had never opened. It had the Pentagon seal. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it, to the family of Master Sergeant Marcus D. Henderson. "Your husband served this country with distinction. His actions during Operation Glass River saved the lives of 13 operatives and prevented a direct assault on a U.S. embassy overseas. Due to the classified nature of his assignments, his full commendations remain sealed. But know this, he was a hero among heroes. His name is spoken in rooms the world never sees, and his sacrifice is not forgotten. He died protecting those who could not protect themselves. We thank you, and we honor him. Department of Defense, Office of Special Operations." My hands shook, my eyes stung. For the first time, I understood why Mom never talked much about him. The pain was too heavy, the pride too sharp. But now I knew. My father was not just a myth I clung to, he was real. He was thunder and silence. He was the reason I could walk the street and still hold my head high. And yet, he was gone. And people like Officer Logan could still laugh in my face. That is when something shifted inside me. It was not rage. It was resolve. I printed the letter, folded it, slid it into my backpack, because next time someone questioned who I was, I would have an answer. And maybe, just maybe, I would start asking questions too. About why someone like Logan could wear a badge with no consequences. About why a legacy like my father's could be forgotten outside government walls. About what I could do with the truth, now that I had it. He walked like he owned the block. Chin up, chest out, boots striking the pavement, the kind of rhythm only a man drunk on power could produce. Officer Bradley Logan was not new to South Philly. He would been patrolling this area for over a decade, and in his mind, that meant he was the law, the kind of law that did not need rules, just reasons. And if none existed, he could make one up. That is who he was when he rolled up to me that rainy afternoon. But who was behind the badge? That was something darker. Logan grew up in the suburbs. Clean lawns, gated fences, a father who was a state trooper, and a grandfather who served as sheriff in the next county over. The Logan name was respected in certain circles, and feared in others. He carried the weight of that legacy like a sledgehammer. No one ever told him no. No one ever made him stop. So when he pulled over a kid like me, and I dared to speak with dignity, that was not just unacceptable, it was a threat. He would seen kids like me before, or so he thought. Hoodie, quiet, brown skin, probably up to something. He told himself he was just doing his job, but the truth, he enjoyed the power imbalance. The way he could make someone shrink with just a look. The way his voice could shatter confidence. And that laugh when I said my dad was a legend, that laugh was more than mockery. It was domination. But that night, after the man from the Pentagon stepped in, something cracked in him. He replayed again and again. The rain, the command in that voice. You just embarrassed yourself in front of a legacy. Those words echoed like a drumbeat in his skull. He went home to his small 2-bedroom apartment above a sandwich shop, his boots soaked, his ego bleeding. He poured a shot of whiskey, turned on the news, and sat in silence. Nothing. No mention of it. No report. No reprimand. Maybe it would all go away. But the next morning, a call came. This is Lieutenant Graves from D.C. Internal Affairs. Officer Logan, we have some questions about an interaction you had with a minor Malik Henderson. His hand trembled around the phone. Yeah. Sure. But it was nothing. Just a misunderstanding. Kid fit a description. Officer. The voice interrupted, calm but razor sharp. That kid is the son of Master Sergeant Marcus Henderson. You know that name. He went pale. Yes, I do now. Well, you should be known before you laughed in his face. Click. The line went dead. Logan did not sleep for 2 nights. What he did not know was that the moment he smirked at me in that street, someone had recorded the whole thing. A bystander, a woman in a red raincoat, posted it on TikTok. In the video, I stood there soaked, my voice calm but proud. My dad's a legend. Then Logan's face filled the screen. Smirking. Mocking. Then that moment when the man in the dark coat stepped out, and the fear hit Logan's eyes like a slap. The video hit 3 million views by morning. #Sunnofelgen trended for 72 hours straight. People started asking questions, not just about me. About Logan. About his record. Turns out, I was not the first kid he harassed. Not even the 5th. Complaints had been buried, body cams turned off. Statements rewritten. But now, people were watching. And in a city where silence had once been protection for men like him, now silence was betrayal. He was summoned for review, placed under investigation. I did not know any of this at first. I just knew that suddenly, people looked at me differently in the hallways. Not with mockery, but with curiosity. A mix of fear, awe, and maybe even a little respect. Then one day, a letter arrived at my school. It was not from Logan. It was from the Office of Military Communications. To Malik Henderson. From Department of Defense Special Recognition Division. Subject: posthumous commendation request. It was real. The government wanted to recognize my father publicly, for the first time. A full honor ceremony, with me at the center. That afternoon, I sat on my roof, wind brushing my cheeks, city lights blinking below. I thought about Logan, his laugh, his face when the man said, "You will be hearing from the Pentagon." I thought about how easily people like him used power, and how hard it was for someone like me to be believed. But now the world knew my name, not because I shouted it, but because I did not let it be silenced. And maybe that is what scared Officer Logan the most. Not my words, not even my father, but the fact that, for the first time in his life, his badge could not protect him from the truth. They did not say it to my face. Not all of them, but I could feel it. The looks in the hallways were louder than any words. Whispers trailed behind me like shadows. That is the kid who got a cop investigated. He lied about his dad. He set Logan up. A week had passed since the confrontation on the street, and the video had already gone viral. But in Roosevelt High, where I would spend most of my school life blending in, nothing felt familiar anymore. When I walked into first period, my seat had been moved to the front right under the teacher's nose. Coincidence? Maybe, but I noticed how Trammell, a history teacher who once praised my civil rights essay, now avoided eye contact. I noticed how some of the white kids clenched their jaws when I entered the room, and how others nodded at me with fake smiles that did not reach their eyes. I sat down quietly. Behind me, someone whispered, "Bet his dad was just a janitor. That whole soldier story is cap." Laughter. Then silence. I did not turn around. I did not have to. Because deep down, it did not hurt because it was false. It hurt because that lie was easier for them to believe than my truth. Later that day, during lunch, I sat with Caleb and Andrei, my two closest friends since elementary. Caleb was tall, lanky, with a sarcastic streak that usually made bad days feel bearable. Andrei was quiet but smart as hell, could build a drone from scratch if you gave him 2 paper clips and a battery. "Yo, Malik," Caleb said cautiously, unwrapping his sandwich. "You good?" I shrugged. "I am fine." You see what Principal Hill said in the newsletter? Said students should avoid engagement with law enforcement matters circulating on social media. Andrei rolled his eyes. Translation: shut up and do not make the school look bad. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. Funny how they only care about reputation when someone tells the truth. That is when they walked in. 3 school resource officers. Usually they stayed by the front office, rarely walking the lunchroom floor unless there was a fight. But today, they moved with purpose. One of them, Officer Krantz, held a printout of something. His eyes scanned the cafeteria until they landed on me. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. Malik Henderson, he said, voice sharp and public. I stood slowly. Yeah. You need to come with us. Every eye in the lunchroom turned toward me. And just like that, I was on trial again. They marched me through the hall like I was wearing cuffs, though I was not. I kept my head up, chest steady but inside. I could hear my heartbeat pounding like drums. We entered the principal's office. Principal Hill sat behind his desk. A stern, square-jawed man with a voice like gravel. Henderson, he said, motioning to the chair. Have a seat. I sat. Krantz remained standing behind me. Hill slid the printout across the desk. It was a screenshot from a tweet. My tweet. They laughed at me when I said my dad was a legend. Now the Pentagon's calling. Keep watching. That is not inappropriate, I said quietly. It is the truth. Hill laced his fingers together. The problem is not whether it is true. The problem is that it is attracting attention. Negative attention. To who? To this school, to our officers, and to you. I blinked. So you want me to stop telling people my dad was a hero? You want me to be quiet? Hill sighed. Leaning back. I want you to understand the power of your words, son, and the cost they bring. I sat there stunned. Not because of the threat, but because of the familiarity in it. I would heard it before, not just in voices, but in silence, in the way systems cover themselves, in the way people in charge do not need to say, sit down, when they have built the chair themselves. Am I in trouble? I asked. No. He said, not yet. They let me go. But not before Krantz whispered something, as I walked past him. You think being a hero's kid makes you untouchable. You better wake up. I did not flinch. I did not even blink, because I was already awake. That evening, Mom found me sitting on the porch, the wind pushing against the screen door. What happened today? She asked, her voice low. I told her everything. The tweet. The principal. The whisper. She did not cry. She did not scream. She went quiet. Then she pulled out a manila folder from the closet. Inside were documents I would never seen before. Photos. Transcripts. A Pentagon briefing. I kept this for you, she said, handing them to me, because I wanted you to grow up without fear. I wanted to protect you. I stared at the words, Operation Glass River. Solo extraction. Lev save. 13. Agent, Mest Marcus Henderson. I do not want to be protected. I whispered. I want to be believed. She pulled me close. You will be. One day. But I did not want one day. I wanted now. So I scanned every page. I uploaded them to a secure folder. And then I made a choice. The world would hear my father's name. Not from me, but from the truth. The morning it all exploded. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed violently on the bathroom counter, over and over. Messages. Mentions. Missed calls. The screen lit up with names I had not spoken to in years. People from school. Reporters. Numbers I did not even recognize. The folder I uploaded the night before containing every classified, but declassified enough document about my dad was now viral. I had only sent the link to one person, a journalist named Regina Bell from the Philadelphia Voice. She used to cover military injustice and wrote a story last year about a forgotten veteran whose grave did not have a nameplate. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would listen. She did not just listen. She amplified. The headline hit like thunder. The ghost returns. Forgotten war hero's son silenced at school. Mocked by cop, now the Pentagon responds. I stared at it for a long time. Toothbrush hanging out of my mouth. Underneath was a photo. Me standing in the rain that day, soaked and small. Logan towering over me. Smirking. A freeze frame of humiliation. But now, next to it, was a photo of my dad in uniform. Eyes sharp, jaw set, like he could walk off the screen and into the street. Then I read the opening paragraph. Malik Henderson, 14, stood on a Philadelphia sidewalk and uttered 6 words that drew laughter from a police officer. My dad is a legend. What Officer Logan did not know, what the world did not know, was that Malik's ex-father was Master Sergeant Marcus D. Henderson, a classified operative whose acts of heroism saved lives, prevented attacks, and changed the course of covert U.S. military history. This is not just the story of a boy. It is the story of a legacy denied, and the moment a city was forced to reckon with its silence. By noon, the article had been picked up by Chen. By 3 p.m., it was on the front page of Reddit. By 6, Officer Logan was suspended, pending an internal affairs investigation. And by sunset, I was standing in our living room, watching our street fill with cameras. Mom stood frozen at the window. They are not going away. I whispered. She nodded slowly. No. They won T. That night, the school released a statement. It was full of polished language. We support our students. We are committed to equity and safety. We will review our protocols. But everyone saw it for what it was. Damage control. And then the backlash started. The same people who mocked me now had opinions. Why did not he speak up sooner? Why does it always have to go viral to matter? Kids these days, using their parents' names for clout. I read them all. Every comment. Every doubt, every little arrow launched by strangers who thought they knew my life better than me. But I did not break. I remembered what Mom said. The truth does not need permission to exist. Still, the worst part was not the news. It was school. The next day, I walked through the gates like I was radioactive. Some stared in awe. Some avoided me entirely. But most just watched, like I was some rare species behind glass. At lunch, no one sat with me, not even Caleb and Andrai. Not because they did not want, but because they were scared. That is when it happened. Bethany Lawrence, Student Council President. Perfect pa. Always wore pearls like she was running for Congress, stood on her chair in the middle of the cafeteria. She cleared her throat. Malik Henderson is a liar, she said, loud enough for the walls to feel it. Everyone froze. He is using his dead dad to get attention. I looked it up. There is no record of Marcus Henderson on any public military honors list. Nothing. It is fake. I stood up. Fists clenched. But before I could speak, someone else rose to their feet. It was Ems, Langley, the school counselor. She walked in from the hallway like a storm with shoes. "That is enough," she said. Bethany stammered. You were just broadcasting slander in a public space. And before you mention honor rolls and prom committees, let me remind you that the Pentagon does not post heroes online for your approval." The room was silent as Langley turned to me. "Malik, come with me." We walked the halls like soldiers retreating from a war we did not start. Inside her office, she handed me a sealed envelope. "This came for you." I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a formal invitation, printed on high-grade paper with the Department of Defense seal embossed in gold. "You are cordially invited to attend the posthumous Medal of Valor ceremony for Master Sergeant Marcus D. Henderson. Location: Arlington National Cemetery. Time: 11:00 am. Date: May 28th. Guest of honor: Malik Henderson, son." I sat down. I did not cry. I just breathed. Slow, deep, certain. The world had laughed when I said my dad was a legend. But now, the Pentagon would speak louder. And this time, everyone would listen. It was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, where everything looks still but nothing is the same. After the article, the video, the suspension, and the viral flood of truth, I expected things to slow down. But instead, they only got bigger. The night before the call came, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. Mom was asleep on the couch, her arm covering her face, still wearing her work scrubs. The TV had gone to static. I was too wired to rest. I kept replaying the words from the Pentagon letter. Guest of honor. Me. The son of the man they called the ghost. That morning, the call came in on our house phone. The landline we never used unless it was a bill collector or someone from church. I almost did not answer. "Hello? Is this Malik Henderson?" "Yes." "Speaking." "This is Commander Alden Shaw, Department of Defense, Office of Legacy and Commemoration." My hand gripped the receiver tighter. "We wanted to speak to you and your mother regarding your father's service and the upcoming ceremony. Are you available?" "Yes, sir." There was a pause. Then, "Your father, Master Sergeant Marcus Henderson, was not just a soldier. He was a shadow when shadows were needed. I served with him once, a man of few words, but he could silence a battlefield. You look like him. You know." My throat tightened. "Thank you," I whispered. "We have arranged for a car to pick you both up next week. You will be flown to Washington on a military aircraft. Full honors." "Full honors." "Yes. He is receiving the Medal of Valor. It is the highest commendation we can give someone who never asked for recognition." I could not breathe for a moment. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. Then something hit me. The world had tried to bury his story in a drawer labeled confidential. But now they were opening that drawer and turning the light on. When I told Mom, she sat down slowly on the edge of the kitchen chair. Her hand covered her mouth. Her eyes were glass. "I knew this day would come," she said. But I did not know it would be you who brought it. The next few days blurred together. My face was on the local news. Then the national. My tweet hit 10 million views. Strangers sent messages, some filled with hate, most with awe. I ignored the noise. I stayed focused on the one thing that mattered. I was going to bring my father home. But Roosevelt, hi. They did not know how to react. Some teachers avoided me altogether. Others tried to act like they would always supported me. Even Bethany Lawrence, the student council president who tried to humiliate me in the cafeteria, sent me a long text about miscommunication and learning moments. I did not reply. One day, in the hallway, Officer Krantz, the same one who had whispered threats into my ear, stood near the lockers. He did not say anything as I walked by. But I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You were wrong about me." He did not respond. He did not have to. His silence was loud enough. When the day came, they sent a black government sub to our block. Neighbors came out on their porches as I stepped into the vehicle in a suit that felt both too big and too sacred. Mom wore a dark blue dress, her hair tied back tight, her eyes steady. We did not speak much on the flight, but we held hands the entire time. The ceremony was at Arlington National Cemetery, under a sky so clear it felt painted. Rows of white stones stretched for miles, each one a silent story. When we arrived, a sea of uniforms greeted us: generals, admirals, commanders, all standing for us. For him, the announcer spoke first. Then came Commander Shaw. He took the podium, cleared his throat, and began. There are men who wear valor on their sleeves, and there are men like Marcus Henderson who wore it on their soul. He operated in silence. He saved without seeking glory. And when he gave his life, he did so knowing no one would ever read it in a headline. But today, we changed that. They handed the Medal of Valor to my mother, who clutched it like it weighed 100 pounds. I stepped forward, and they called me by name. Malik Henderson, son of a soldier, voice of a forgotten legacy. Your courage lit the path to this moment. The audience stood. I looked out and saw thousands, but in my mind, I saw one. My father, not the ghost. The man, the one who tossed me in the air as a baby, who whispered to my mom in the kitchen when he did not know I was listening. The one who carried honor like breath. As they played taps, I could barely stand. But I did, because this was not just a ceremony. It was a reckoning. For every boy whose truth was laughed at, for every legacy buried under silence, for every voice told to stay quiet. They say the dead can hear you, but I swear, when I stepped up to that microphone, I felt him, like wind on my back, lifting my spine, like fire in my chest, keeping my words from shaking. I looked out over a sea of uniforms, press cameras, politicians, and ordinary people who had once ignored me, who now stood waiting to hear a 14-year-old black boy from South Philly would say on the most sacred land in the country. The Pentagon had given me 3 minutes to speak. But this was not their moment. It was mine. So I gripped the wooden sides of the podium, leaned into the mic, and told the truth. My name is Malik Henderson. I am not a soldier. I do not wear a uniform. I am just a son. And a week ago, a cop laughed in my face when I said my dad was a legend. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not scandalized, just real. He did not know who my father was. But that is not the problem. The problem is he did not care. Because where I come from, being a black kid in a hoodie means you do not get the benefit of the doubt. You get the assumption. You get the suspicion. You get the smirk. And sometimes, if you are unlucky, you do not get to walk away. I paused. No one moved. My dad, Master Sergeant Marcus Henderson, saved 13 lives behind enemy lines. You won't find his name on Wikipedia. You won't read about him in your history books. But he was there, in the shadows, doing the work, carrying the weight. Without applause. And I came here today, not just to honor him, but to ask a question. Why does someone have to die for the world to believe they mattered? Silence. Heavy, holy. Why does a soldier have to give his life for his son, to be treated like a human being? I looked out into the cameras. We say thank you for your service. But do we thank the families they leave behind? Do we protect their children from being mocked, harassed, silenced? I am not just my father's son. I am your son. Your student. Your neighbor. And I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking for equal worth. I swallowed hard. So to every kid who has been told to sit down, to stay quiet, to stop dreaming, I see you. I am you. And to every officer Logan out there, I forgive you. That last line burned on my tongue. But it was real. Because carrying hate only weighs you down when you are trying to rise. I stepped back. There was no applause. Not yet. Just a pause. Then someone stood. Then another. Then everyone. A standing ovation not for me, but for the truth. After the ceremony, people came up in waves, military generals, reporters, teachers from DXA, schools, even kids I would never met. Some cried. Some whispered thank you. But one moment stood out. A man in a wheelchair rolled forward, old. Wrinkled hands, one missing leg. His medals lined his chest. He gripped my hand tight. Your father saved me, he said. Voice breaking. He dragged me out of a firestorm. Didn't even give his name. I never knew who he was. Until today. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. Now you do. He smiled. Now everyone does. When I returned to school, it was different. The walls had not changed, but I had. There were no more whispers, no more stares. Bethany Lawrence asked to meet with me privately. She apologized. Sincerely, said she did not understand, that she let her assumptions lead. I told her I did not need her guilt. I needed her to do better. She nodded. I think she meant it. Even Officer Krantz was gone. Transferred. Logan. Fired. The internal review revealed more complaints. More abuse. More silenced voices. But not anymore. Because the truth had teeth now. A month later, I was invited to speak at a national education summit. 2 months after that, my story was used in a congressional hearing about school policing and systemic bias. They called me an activist. I called myself Malik, the son of a soldier, the voice of a legacy. And one day, maybe I will become a man like the one I lost. But for now, I keep walking. Head high. Shoulders back, because legends do not stay buried. Not when their sons are still breathing. They mailed it to us 2 weeks later, a navy blue velvet box, delivered by an officer in full dress uniform, sealed with a gold-foiled emblem of the Department of Defense. Inside, the Medal of Valor, my father's final recognition, the symbol that said, "We see you now," not in shadows, not in footnotes, but in the center of the story. Mom placed it on the mantel above the fireplace, right next to the folded flag and that one black and white photo where he is holding me, just a baby with a toothless smile, clinging to the chest of a man I barely remember, but have come to understand more than ever. I did not touch the medal. Not yet. It was not mine. It belonged to something bigger. The media attention did not fade. It morphed. I was no longer just a viral kid. Now I was being called to speak at schools. Civic events, even on TV. Interviews stacked up. I turned most down, not because I did not care, but because I did not want to become a headline instead of a human being. I still had to go to school, do homework, clean the dishes, be a son. But one invitation stopped me cold. A formal letter from the White House. You are invited to speak at the National Forum on Racial Equity in Policing. Washington, D.C. As a youth keynote representative. It was signed by the president, and unlike before, this time, they did not want to silence me. They wanted to listen. I stood on stage in front of lawmakers, activists, families, and officers. The room was enormous, wrapped in marble and light. And once again, I spoke, but not about my dad, about the other names, the ones who did not get medals. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Elijah Clayne, kids, daughters, sons, legends in their own right, whose stories were often reduced to hashtags and grief. We say we honor sacrifice. I told them, but what about injustice that comes not from war zones, but from sidewalks? Not from foreign enemies, but from those sworn to protect. I shared what it meant to be mocked for honoring your own family, what it meant to carry the burden of proving your humanity again and again. And then I said something I did not plan to say. This medal my father earned, it should not be the only reason I am believed, because the truth is, every kid deserves to be believed. Before the death, before the press, before the applause. They did not clap right away. They stood. A thunderous, aching kind of applause that was not for me, but for the children we keep losing. For the children we are still trying to save. That night, back in the hotel room, I sat on the balcony and looked out at the Capitol building. Lit up like a dream. Mom came out, 2 mugs in hand. "Hot cocoa?" she asked. I nodded, taking the cup. "I think Dad would like this view." She smiled. "He would liked you more." We sat in silence. The kind that only comes when everything has been said, but the feeling remains. Then she asked me, softly, "What are you going to do next?" I did not answer right away, because I did not know. I was still a boy. but a boy who had seen the world shift under his feet. A boy who had walked through disbelief, past humiliation, and into the light of recognition without losing who he was. Maybe I would write a book. Maybe I would become a lawyer. Maybe I would teach other kids how to fight with truth and not fists. But one thing was clear. I was not going back to silence. Not ever. The next morning, as we packed to head home, I noticed something new in our hotel room. A note had been slipped under the door. No signature. No name. Just a sentence written in neat block letters. Your father saved my brother. You saved me. Dante, stop. I did not know who wrote it. Didn't he need to? Because sometimes the loudest thank you comes in whispers. Sometimes the biggest change starts with one small truth. And sometimes, being believed is the most powerful thing in the world. They used to call me the kid who made it up. Now they call me the kid who made it matter. But I did not set out to change the world. I only wanted one man to believe me. One officer. One principal. One teacher. One classmate to believe that when I said my dad is a legend, I was not bragging. I was remembering. I was honoring. I was asking to be seen. But sometimes the universe gives you more than you ask for whether you are ready or not. When we returned to Philadelphia, the city felt different. Not louder. Not quieter. Just awake. There were murals of my father going up in our neighborhood. An old brick wall that used to be covered in gang tags now bore his face in full military gear. Eyes focused. Mouth strong, with the words. The ghost, remember his name. Below it, someone had spray-painted in smaller letters, and believe his son. People who had ignored me before were now waving when I passed. The school set up a scholarship in my father's name, the Marcus Henderson Fellowship for Honor and Service. It came with an annual speech requirement. Guess who they asked to give the first one? I stood in the school auditorium, same stage where I once watched talent shows and assemblies that had nothing to do with kids like me. Now, they were there for me. The room was packed. Even Bethany sat in the front row, notebook in her lap, eyes locked on me. I spoke again, but this time, I did not speak for anyone else. I spoke as myself. This is not a speech about war, or medals, or even justice. This is a speech about belief. Belief in stories that sound too good to be true, but are not. Belief in kids who walk through this world carrying invisible weights. Belief in families who do not wear their pain on their sleeves, but hold it in their bones. My father never asked to be honored, but he deserved to be, and so do all the kids like me. Not because of who we are related to, but because we exist. Because our lives are not footnotes. Our names are not maybes. We are not disposable. We are not a joke. I paused. I was laughed at for saying my dad was a legend. Now, the world listens. So hear me now, every single one of you. Dante, wait for permission to tell the truth. Dante, wait for the world to give you the mic. Sometimes, you have got to build the stage yourself. People stood, clapped. Some cried. I saw Caleb and Andrea in the back, nodding like brothers who knew the journey had not been easy but worth it. I saw Ms. Langley. She mouthed the words, "He would be proud," And for the first time, I felt it, not the weight of my dad's absence, but the power of his presence everywhere. Later that week, we got another package. This one came from overseas. Inside was a letter, no return address, just a wax-sealed note that read, "To the family of Marcus Henderson, he saved me in Afghanistan. I was 17. Now I am a captain. I teach my squad about silence, precision, and courage. Because of him, thank you for sharing his truth." The world needed it. I needed it. Enclosed was a medal. Foreign, worn, clearly carried through war. It was not the Pentagon's. It was not ours. But I placed it beside my father as on the mantle. Because some honors are not given, they are shared. That weekend, Mom and I visited his grave. It was the first time since the ceremony. She brought flowers, white lilies, and one single red rose. I brought the speech. I read it aloud, my voice steady, the wind catching every word. When I finished, I whispered, "They know now, Dad. They all know." And I swear the wind answered me. A single gust blew through the leaves above, shaking them loose like applause only the sky could give. We stood there in silence. Then Mom looked over and said, "You are not a boy anymore." I smiled, not just yet, but I was close, closer than ever, because being believed does that to you. It turns fear into fuel. It turns silence into story. It turns a name into a legacy. And now, I carry both. There was a time I thought legends only lived in statues and old books, that they wore capes or crowns, or stood on battlefields frozen in black and white photos. I never thought they wore boots with worn-out soles, smiled with quiet eyes, and held their child gently in one arm, while carrying the weight of the world in the other. But now I know better, because I knew one, and I carry him with me. Every step. It has been 6 months since the day I stood at the podium in Arlington, since I told the world my truth and dared them to believe it. In that time, things have changed and things have not. Officer Logan, he disappeared from the headlines just as fast as he entered them. No public apology. No reckoning. Just silence. But I do not need his apology anymore, because I got something bigger. A nation watched, and it learned. Now, schools across the country have started programs called Legacy Circles, places where students share their family stories, their pain, their pride without being mocked or dismissed. I helped launch the first one at Roosevelt High, the same school that once asked me to be careful what I post. Now, they built a memorial wall inside the library, and at the center, a framed photo of my father. Next to it, a plaque. Marcus D. Henderson, soldier. Father, ghost no more. Every week, I see kids stop there. Some bow their heads. Some just look. But they see him now. They see me. And maybe they see themselves. As for me, I still live in South Philly. Still eat peach cobbler from M's. Geraldine S. porch. Still walk to school past the mural of Dad's face, where someone always leaves a fresh flower under the word legend. But I have changed. I started a foundation, the Henderson Truth Project. We help kids whose stories were buried by systems, by silence, by shame. We give them platforms, mentors, microphones. I go to schools where boys sit in the back with hoods over their heads, thinking no one sees them. I tell them, I see you, because someone saw me, and it saved my life. One night, as I was leaving a community meeting, a woman stopped me in the parking lot. She was older, gray hair tied up, eyes kind but sad. "You are Malik, right?" "Yes, madam." She held out a wrinkled photo, a young soldier, same uniform as my father's. "My son, he served with yours." I stared at her. No one believed he was a hero. She whispered, "Until you told your story. Now, they are asking about him too." I nodded, because I understood truth is contagious. So is courage. The night before my 15th birthday, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, same way I had the night everything began. But this time, there was no ache in my chest, no weight on my shoulders, only fire in my heart. I got up, went to the living room, stood before the mantel, and for the first time, I picked up the medal of valor. It was heavy, but it did not crush me. It fit in my hand, like it belonged. I whispered, "We did it, Dad." And I knew somehow he heard me. I may still be a boy, but I carry a legacy. I speak with his voice, and I walk with my own. Because legends do not live in shadows. They live in sons who speak, in mothers who believe, in communities who rise, in moments where the truth refuses to die. And if you are reading this, if you have ever been doubted, dismissed, silenced, remember, you do not have to wait for permission. Stand, speak, be the voice, be the proof, be the legend. I was just a kid they laughed at. A hoodie, a backpack, a voice too soft for a world too loud. But when I said, "My dad is a legend," I was not asking for attention. I was begging to be believed. And in a moment when laughter tried to drown my truth, I stood still, and I stood strong. Because truth does not need to scream it, it only needs to survive long enough to be heard. Now, my father's name echoes through schools, ceremonies, and streets, and mine stands beside it not because of his shadow, but because I chose to step into the light. So to every kid, every parent, every silent heart still waiting to be seen, don't wait. Speak up, because legends are not always found in books. Sometimes, they are born the moment someone finally listens. Meaningful lesson. Your story matters even when the world laughs, even when they doubt your name, your pain, your truth, because being believed is not a privilege, it is a right. And when one voice speaks up, it lights the path for others to rise. Subscribe for more true, powerful stories that challenge injustice. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. You are not invisible. You are not alone. And you are worth believing.